Hi everyone, welcome to the final video of Chinese. In this video, as you know, we will just go back to our 10 sample words which we saw in the first video and go through each one and use all the spelling rules that we have learned over the last 2-3 videos and apply them to these words. Now, hopefully by now you've noticed that Chinese is a very beautiful language, but it's also very simple, not very complex as, you know, maybe Dutch or Irish. So that's always one positive, and just try to remember those patterns that we talked about as we go through each one of these words. So what I'm going to do is right now I'm just going to write each of the 10 words, and to make it fun we'll do it in colors, different colors. So we'll start with the first one. The first word was wushu. Wushu, W-U-S-H-U. Maybe I should, oh, this is a nice color. Okay, so that's wushu, the first word. And wushu is basically like martial arts. So that's what it means, it's martial arts, or a kind of martial arts. Second word was Qingma. So Qingma, C-H-I-N-G-M-A. Qingma, okay? And that again is a fiber. Third word was Haitsai. Haitsai, H-A-I-T-S-A-I, Haitsai. And Haitsai basically is a type of algae, or alga for the singular. So it's like a plant, I guess, even though algae aren't, it's not exactly a plant, but you get the drift, it's alga. Fourth word was Pidon. Pidon, and that means duck eggs. Maybe some of you have tried it. It's P-I-D-A-N, Pidon. Okay, now word number 5 is Yamen, Y-A-M-E-N. And so Yamen is like the headquarters or an office, like an authoritative building, kind of. Oh, these colors look really nice, so we'll keep on going with those. Word number 6 is Dujun. Dujun. T-U-C-H-U-N. Looks like a bit of a gap there, so let me fix that. Dujun. And many of these words we actually saw as example words in the previous video, so that's a good thing, because we can talk about what we learned from that. Okay, so that was the 6th word, Dujun, and it's a military governor. That's what it means. Word number 7 is Subgum. Subgum. S-U-B-G-U-M. Okay, Subgum. And Subgum is a kind of dish. Remember, I think it was that vegetable dish with the, peppers and mushrooms. So that's Subgum. Okay, word number 8 was Paktong. Paktong. And it's a kind of alloy, so it's a metallic substance. Paktong. Word number 9 is Mahuang. Mahuang, M-A-H-U-A-N-G. And Mahuang is another type of plant. Okay, so that's Mahuang. And our final, 10th word is Shin, which is H-S-I-N. Shin. And that again means faithfulness or truthfulness, veracity, especially in Confucian ideals. Okay, so here are our 10 words, and I know many of them we've seen before, but now we're just going to go through each one and talk about, what rule applies to each one. So let's do that in white, be easy to see. So starting right off with the first word, wushu, meaning martial arts. At the beginning, we have our W. Remember, lots of consonants in Chinese are very similar to those in English. Remember, there are just like 3 of them that are kind of special, but this isn't one of them. So we use our typical W for the W sound. Now we have our U sound, the long U sound. And remember, I said that that's always spelled with a U, except for one word, which is oolong. In all other cases, we're going to have, a U. So that's why we have this U and this U. So, that's why we have these U's used for the spelling of that. Now, the sh sound, remember I said in the middle of a word, it's going to be spelled a conventional way, the SH way that you'd expect it to be spelled. If it was at the beginning of the word, then you would have to think about that HS spelling. That's one of those special sounds. But here, because it's in the middle of the word, we can go ahead and use SH. Okay, so that's a very simple word, wushu, and it follows all the rules. Okay, so that's word number 1. Okay, so word number 2 was qingma, the kind of fiber. So we start off with the ch sound, and here we do start with the ch. I remember saying that if a word, Chinese word, started with the sound j, the j sound, it would be spelled ch. Like we did Zhoukoutian, we did the word jing, which was spelled ching. But this word qingma, just because that's true, the converse is not true. That if a word starts with ch, it doesn't mean it's pronounced with a j. So I hope that makes sense. So if you hear the j sound at the beginning, it's spelled with a ch. But just because a word starts with a ch does not mean it has to be pronounced with a j. So this one's pronounced typical ch. Then we have the I sound, the short I sound, which is always spelled an I. That was one of the easy ones. Ng, very typical vowel thing. It's a very common sound in Chinese. As you see, here's an Ng, here's an Ng. We'll come to those later. But the Ng is a very common thing in Chinese, so we have that. M is the normal consonant sound. And remember I said the schwas are not common in Chinese at all. This is a schwa sound. And if a word ends in a schwa, then it's always going to be spelled with an A, because any other vowel, it doesn't really make sense to put there. In Chinese, the U is used for a schwa in the middle of words, but if it's at the end, use an A, like any other language. So that's qingma. Okay, third word, heitzai. Heitzai, we start off with our normal consonant, H, nothing special about that. Remember the long I sound, the sound I, is mostly spelled AI. Remember there's some exceptions with the Y, like the word Hyson, but this is one of the common ones. So we have our AI there and our AI here for the I sound. That's the most common way to spell it. And this TS is very common, and it's nothing different, it's just like English, heitzai. So our TS will naturally be there. So again, this is a very simple Chinese word. Okay, fourth word is pidan, the duck eggs. Now again, nothing special about that p sound at the beginning. It's a normal consonant, so we spell it like that. Then we have our long E sound. And remember, this long E sound, which is pronounced E, can be spelled two ways, with an I or with an EE. And remember, the EE usually comes towards the end of the word, and the I usually happens in the middle of the word. So again, that's why we have an I there. Very simple. D is our normal, P, dan. The D sound is spelled with a D in the middle of the word. Remember, if it comes at the beginning of the word, then it might start with the letter T. But if it's in the middle, just like we saw here with the SH, if it's in the middle of the word, spell it the way you would expect to spell it, spell it with a D. Then we have our ah sound. Remember, our ah sound can be spelled with an A or an O. An O usually comes before the words ending with ng, like Tong or Hong Kong. So this one doesn't have that, so we're going to use our A spelling, okay, for the ah sound. Very typical. And then we end it with an N. Lots of Chinese words end with an N. As you can probably see in this list, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. There's a lot of Chinese words ending with N, so don't worry about that ever. Okay, if it ends in the N sound, spell it with an N. Okay, fifth word is yamen. Yamen, meaning the headquarters or office. And we start off with our Y, very simple consonant sound. Again, that ah sound, A with 2 dots. Because there's no ng coming after, we're going to spell it with an A. Very common way to spell it. M is a normal consonant. Our sound, short E sound, is only spelled one way, with an E, and that's why we have that there. Remember the word renminbi we did. Every sound that is is spelled with an E in Chinese, and we end with our N. Very simple, yamen. Okay, now our sixth word, we're halfway done, is dujun. Remember, dujun is a military governor, and we do have that D sound at the beginning, and that's why we use the T. This is one of those special consonant rules. If you have the D sound at the beginning of a Chinese word, then T is probably the best way to go about spelling that. So we have that. We have our U, du, jin, and remember U is always spelled with the U except for oolong, so that follows that rule. CH, again, common blend in Chinese. It's a very common blend in Chinese actually. And here we do pronounce it ch because it's not at the beginning, so we don't have to worry about pronouncing it with a J. So it's very normal. And then we have dujun. We have a kind of like a schwa sound, and remember that's always spelled with a U, except if it's at the end of the word, then it's spelled with an A, as we see here. And we end with an N. So this is another very typical Chinese word. It's a great example of all those rules that we covered. And just remember, anytime if you feel like I might be going too fast or you're a little bit stuck, then just feel free to, pause the video or go back and just, re-listen to what I said, or go back to the other words. Or you can always go back to the videos before to sort of recap the rules. If you ever feel like this is going too fast or anything, just you can always pause the video or go back or revisit. And of course, you can always ask me questions if you have any questions through my email or through my blog. So that's just one thing to put out there. If you're ever confused, I'm available to answer any questions, or you can go back on your own time and review. Okay, so that's dujin. Next word is sabgum. This is a very, very easy, simple word. S and B and the G and the M are all very typical consonant sounds spelled just as they would be in English, and none of them are any of those fancy ones, so we leave those alone. And our U's represent those schwas. Remember, the schwa in Chinese is spelled with a U, except at the end of the word. So sabgum, very simple, use those U's for the schwa. Okay, and sabgum again is that dish, that vegetable dish. Alright, word number 8 is pak tong. Now this is an interesting one. What I want to do is actually, this word in Chinese is kind of like a compound word because tong comes from a Chinese word tung, meaning copper. So I'm going to split this up into two parts right here, like this. Let's look at pak first. A P, normal consonant, spell it just as you would. This is the short A sound, a, and that's why we're going to spell it A, because that's the only way to spell it in Chinese. It's that simple sound, so always, A is always spelled with an A. Ka, remember I said in the last video, the ka sound in Chinese is always spelled with a K, not a C. That's another sort of consonant rule, so we have that K there. K is pretty common in Chinese. And then we come to tong. T is normal. Now remember, the ah sound that I said is usually spelled with an A. If I said that if the word was, around 7 or 8 letters, it's usually going to be an A. In this case, I know the word is 7 letters, but this part of the word comes from tong, meaning copper, and so actually it's kind of like a word on its own, and that's why we're using the O, because it actually is one of those shorter words. And there is a word called tong, so that's why the O is used instead of an A there for pak tong. Okay, so the reason is mainly because it's a compound word. And then that NG coming after is another reason why the O is used, because that sort of, signifies that the O will be there, especially in shorter words. You'll see in the next example, it's a little bit different. So just remember, pak tong, the O is used because it's a compound word, and so we look at tong separately, and that's why we have an O there, because it's a shorter word. The next example, word number 9, ma huang. We have our M is normal, our A is normal there, ma, it's the A sound, so always A. Now we can split it up. If you look at it in syllables, it's ma huang, but huang is actually not a word on its own, and that's why we have our A here for the ah sound, because it's part of the larger word as a whole, There's 7 letters in this one too, so that's why we use the A with the NG. And hua, the H is used for the h sound, and also because it's pronounced hua, that UA combination here, that goes very well together. So that's another reason why the O is not used. So ma huang. And if you think about this in your head, you can sort of visualize that it looks better with an A. And that's actually a very, very important tool or asset that spellers have, is their intuition, or sort of like your sort of language skills, and that actually comes into play more than anything else. When you're ever stuck on a word, you can always sort of rely on your intuition or how you visualize the word, and that's usually the right way to spell it in all languages. So that's something I'll go over again really fast, but that's one thing to keep in mind. Our final word, last but not least, is shin. It's actually got a very important rule in here. Remember, the sh sound at the beginning of a Chinese word is usually HS because of that old way of translating, and that's why we have HS here at the beginning. I is normal for the is sound, and N is a common ending. The rest of the word's easy, but shin has that very important rule of HS at the beginning of a word, especially, it's only for the sh sound. So remember, if the sh sound, sh, sh sound, comes in the middle of the word, as in wushu here, it's going to be spelled sh. But at the beginning of the word, we have it hs. It's the reverse. So that's one really important thing to keep in mind, and that's one of those special consonant sounds and rules that I went over in the last video, so you can always go back to that one and just revisit those. Okay, so these are our 10 words from Chinese. Chinese is, again, as you see, very simple. It follows its rules very well, very consistent, so that's a very nice thing about Chinese. Also, Chinese words aren't very popular in spelling bees or the English language because the trade has been a little bit limited. So the chance that you'll run into a Chinese word is slim. But even if you do, then you can be very confident that you can apply the rules and get the right spelling. So that's it for Chinese, and I'll see you later. Thank you. Bye.